International law rules, principles, and concepts can be divided into three levels based on their subject matters. The first level being the underlying theory or the philosophy of international law, the second level being the rules and principles relating to the operation of the system of international law, and the third level being the rules and principles concerning all the substantive issues that arise in world politics. The rules, principles, and concepts across the three levels interrelate with one another and provide strength and cohesion within the system of international law amidst world politics. Consequently, international law, through its system, becomes autonomous from world politics, with international law being entwined but not enmeshed with world politics. This means that although international law deals directly within the anarchy of world politics, it is still distinguishable in form and in action from this anarchy. The first level is the underlying foundation of the system of international law. This foundation is set up by two main legal theories, among others which we've discussed previously, natural law and positivism. Natural law, if you recall, sees mankind's native sense of reason, morality, and justice as the source of all law. As society is seen as an already established social order by natural law theorists, law is naturally present to maintain this social order through rights, properties, liberty, and etc. Hugo Grotius, the father of modern international law, believes in this theory of the law of nature. However, he also notes the existence of the voluntary law of nations, whereby state practice or the will of states amidst war and peace supplement the law of nature. Universal or natural prohibitions, like the prohibition on murder, may be easily pointed to as sources of law. But if nuances like exceptions and scientific variables are introduced in lawmaking, natural law becomes inadequate. Thus, the dominant theory which grounds international law today is positivism. Positivism believes that law is made by people and does not come naturally nor innately. It has to be proven and realized in actual practice and experience. So, domestic law comes from a legislative authority or a sovereign ruler, while for international law, law comes from sovereign states. And thus, because states make the law, and law derives from the consent and will of states, then international law is law because it is seen as such by its creators, states. As in the Lotus case, a case whereby a French ship and a Turkish ship collided, the rules of law binding upon states therefore emanate from their own free will, and the usage of the free will or consent of the states is found in the sources of international law, primarily theories and custom, and secondarily general principles of law common to sovereign states, which fills the gaps, and judicial decisions and teachings of the most highly qualified publicists which seek to clarify international law. Therefore, positivism is a better foundation than natural law in terms of the system of international law, because you can pinpoint where the law is, and that is essentially what states have constructed the law to be. The issue with positivism in international law, however, is the fact that it is difficult to differentiate international law and international policy, what states want in world politics. Thus, the other two levels of the system of international law try to maintain the differentiation of international law and world politics through the development of internal rules for international law, the second level of the system of international law, and subject matter specific rules for world politics, the third level. The second level of the system of international law is made up of the rules and principles relating to the operation of the system of international law. These are the sources of international law, the rules in relation to these sources, like the VCLT, and the operational rules for the international courts, found in their respective statutes. Previously, we have discussed these operational rules in terms of the monist and dualist theories, and we'll go into further detail next time. Finally, the third level of the system of international law pertains to the substantive issues between states and other international actors. These are the rules, principles, and concepts about the subject matters of international law, like trade law, environmental law, international criminal law, the law of the sea, among others. Notably, the central substantive issue of international law is the use of force, and some argue that the raison d'etre of modern international law is international peace and stability. Obviously, states have the capacity to employ violence through their armed forces. Therefore, international law is there to distinguish whether the use of force is illegal or legal. This is ingrained in the UN Charter, where it aims to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, to keep the peace, and to maximize the alternatives to war. Issues arising from the second and third levels of the system of international law can be channeled into legal questions. Here, it is useful to remember the acronym IRAC, IRAC, which means issue, rule, application of rule, and conclusion. IRAC is used to structure legal analysis, which hits on the important legal points and helps maintain focus on the subject matter, usually shedding politically and emotionally charged rhetoric and concentrating only on pure legal logic. Issue pertains to the legal question, like whether the use of force is legal or not. Rule engages with the international law rules, principles, and concepts that the state parties have consented to through the sources of international law, like the UN Charter. Application of rule relates the rule to the issue and identifies certain findings. And conclusion, well, concludes and summarizes everything. Positivism and the IRAC method assumes that non-legal answers to international law matters can be excluded from legal analysis. And being equipped with a cohesive and strong system of interrelated rules, principles, and concepts, international law can confidently and effectively answer issues of global governance. But of course, if states will it. Nevertheless, with a cohesive system and with the capability to exclude non-legal factors, one can definitely say that international law is autonomous from world politics. This does not mean it is independent of nor immune to the politicking of great powers and world leaders. Rather, as much as it can, international law, although operating in an anarchic world, autonomously embodies the philosophy of positivism and engages with different subject matters through its own terms, logic, and system. Furthermore, states, international institutions, and other actors of international law must maintain the interrelatedness of the three levels of international law. This is so to make sure that the rules-based international order stays significant and its normative force for international peace and stability remains felt. Historically and currently, international law may seem like a toothless institution in the face of great powers. However, by keeping international law cohesive and consistent, in the end, at least the polar opposite of the nuclear button is readily available to willing states.